back to the most unprofessional sports channel on YouTube. Welcome back to Swift Chair Sports. I'm your host, Zach Zuckerberg Burkle, here with the coach today. Aaron, go and say hi, Aaron.
If you like our content, be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, and let us know what you think.
Yep, we recently passed 100 subscribers, so thank you to all who subscribed, and now we're on our way to 250. So if you want to join us on that journey, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. But other than that, let's go ahead and get into it. So in this video, we're going to be giving out our final offseason grades in our offseason grading series by taking a look at the teams in the AFC East, which includes the Bills, Dolphins, Patriots, and Jets. If you haven't seen our first few grading videos, we're going to be taking a look at the key departures, key additions in free agency and trades, as well as the notable 2024 draft picks before revealing our final grades for each team in the division. Make sure to go check out our other videos after this if you haven't. But without further ado, starting off with the defending AFC East champions, Buffalo Bills. The Bills finished last season winning their fourth straight division title. Buffalo would go on to lose in the second round of the playoffs for the third straight year at the hands of eventual Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. This offseason, the Bills had to deal with some Stephon Diggs drama as well as cap limitations in their quest to add some final pieces that can help this team finally get over the hump. Starting off with the key departures, obviously the biggest headline had to be number one wide receiver Stephon Diggs getting dealt to fellow AFC contender Houston Texans in exchange for a 2025 second-round pick from Minnesota, in a deal that included Buffalo having to package 2 late-round picks, along with Diggs, just to have the honor of watching him tear it up for another team next season. Buffalo also parted ways with their second leading receiver, Gabe Davis, who signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars after his targets saw a slight dip this past year with the addition of rookie tight end Dalton Kincaid, and a shift to a more balanced offensive attack when Joe Brady took over as the offensive coordinator midway through the season. The Bills also chose to clean house on the defensive side of the football, releasing 2 prominent defensive backs in Jordan Poyer and Tre'Davious White. Poyer signs with the division rival Dolphins after 7 years in Buffalo that included 22 interceptions and a franchise record for defensive backs, 35 tackles for loss from the safety position. Meanwhile, White signs with the LA Rams after his first 7 seasons as the Bills' cornerback, where he looked to be on the fast track to being one of the best corners in the league. After back-to-back All-Pro seasons in his third and fourth years, before an ACL tear in 2021 and an Achilles tear in 2023 limited him to a combined 21 games played throughout the last 3 seasons. Also on defense, Buffalo parted ways with 2023 team sack leader, edge rusher Leonard Floyd, who made the cross-country trip to sign a 2-year deal with the 49ers after his 1-year pit stop in upstate New York, as well as losing defensive tackle Poona Ford and linebacker Tyrell Dodson. Ford signs with the Chargers after not providing much production for the Bills this past year, only seeing the field in 8 games where he recorded a minuscule 9 total tackles. Dodson, on the other hand, signed with the Seattle Seahawks after getting plenty of opportunities last season, with starting linebacker and All-Pro Matt Milano going down with injury midway through the year, forcing Dodson to step up into the starting role where he finished 4th on the team in total tackles. Oh, and I can't forget to mention Buffalo releasing former Missouri Tiger and Kansas City Chief center Mitch Morse, who ended up signing with the Jaguars after half a decade in Buffalo. That included 1 Pro Bowl appearance. As for the key additions, Buffalo desperately needed to fill the void left by Diggs and Davis walking out the door, and decided to bring in a couple of veteran receiving options in Curtis Samuel from the Commanders and Mac Hollins from the Falcons. Samuel is coming off back-to-back 600-yard seasons after recovering from a groin injury that limited him to 5 games in his first season with Washington. And Hollins is coming off a disappointing season with Atlanta, where he only saw 30 targets in 13 games during his first and only season with the Falcons. The Bills also looked to replace some of their key losses on defense, bringing in linebacker Nicholas Morrow from the Eagles and safety Mike Edwards from the Chiefs. Morrow was a bright spot in bad Philly linebacker core, putting up 95 total tackles, 5 pass breakups, and even 3 sacks, showing he can do a little bit of everything, while Edwards helped provide some depth to an elite KC secondary last year that included him scooping up a fumble and returning it 97 yards to the house in a Week 18 13-12 victory over the Chargers. And looking at the draft, Buffalo notably traded back twice in the first round. First, with the franchise they probably hate more than losing 4 straight Super Bowls in the Kansas City Chiefs, and allowing them to take the man with the fastest feet in the West, Xavier Worthy, before trading back again, this time out of the first round entirely by trading back into the second round with the Panthers, who jumped up to snag another wide receiver in Xavier Leggett. Clearly the Bills have something against guys named Xavier. But they did finally get to draft their guy and wide receiver Keon Coleman out of Florida State, 33rd overall, who they look to take over the wide receiver 1 spot, if not to start this season, then in the very near future. Coleman will likely have a lot of pressure to start his career as he hopes to fill the shoes of 2-time All-Pro Stephon Diggs. After that, they look to improve the defensive side of the football, selecting safety Cole Bishop out of Utah in the second round, who they hope can make up for some of the lost production seen with cutting Jordan Poyer this offseason, and then taking defensive lineman Dwayne Carter out of Duke in the third round, who recorded 114 QB pressures in the last 2 seasons, good enough for second amongst Power 5 D tackles in that span. Buffalo also looked to replace some of the lost depth at the interior offensive lineman position by taking center Cedric Van Pran out of Georgia in the 5th round, who looks to be an immediate impact player and may find his way into the starting lineup before season's end. And out of nowhere, the Bills pull an unorthodox move out of their back pocket, signing former WWE prospect Gable Steveson, who never could get it going in professional wrestling, showing an astounding lack of charisma on the mic, and in-ring work that made the Great Khali look like Bret Hart in comparison. Not sure what he'll be able to add to this team, but it will be interesting to watch at least. So Aaron, how are you feeling about Buffalo's apparent retooling this offseason?
They lost a lot of key components, both to free agency and just trying to get under the cap. But I think they ended up doing all right with all things considered. Losing their 2 highest production receivers, but then bringing in Curtis Samuel and Keon Coleman, and MVS as well. Can't forget him. He's streaky at best, but Gabe Davis was streaky as well. Although I would say Gabe Davis probably has better hands than MVS.
Yeah, higher ceiling too.
Hopefully that's something he can work on this offseason. Bringing in La'el Collins, that's a big get for their tackle position to help keep Josh Allen healthy. And then going out and getting Ray Davis to add more depth to that running back room. We'll see if they decide to keep up their balanced attack. I don't see why they wouldn't. It worked really well. Cook really got going that second half of the season, and Ray Davis just adds another component to that with being a physical, tough runner out of Kentucky.
Yeah, they definitely lost a lot of talent, specifically in the secondary on the defensive side of the football. I mean, losing Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, who's still in limbo. We're not sure if he's going to come back or if he's retired. And then obviously Trey White, despite him, missing several games the last few seasons for the Bills. Trey White whenever he's on the field, he's still good, I think. Honestly, I don't know because we haven't seen him in so long. But I assume he's still, at least serviceable at the cornerback position. So maybe not worth the money that he'd be commanding with his resume, but I think defensively they probably took a step back. I mean, losing a lot of talent, specifically in that secondary. I think they did, you could argue, probably improve the offensive line, bringing in La'el Collins, and despite losing Mitch Morse, I think the additions they made this offseason, I think Cedric Van Pran can bring a lot of what Mitch Morse was bringing to the table, even right away as a rookie. I think I'm very high on Cedric Van Pran out of Georgia. So I don't think they lost a whole lot on the offensive line. I think they brought in more than they lost there. Can't say the same about the secondary. I think the secondary we may see, some drop in performance this next year, and then kind of the same wide receiver room on the offensive side of the football. Stephon Diggs was massive. I don't expect Keon Coleman to come in and, make up for that production right away in his rookie season. And then, like you said, Gabe Davis probably has a much higher ceiling than MVS. You did get Curtis Samuel, who's probably more of a Gabe Davis replacement, and he's probably fairly comparable. But all things considered, I don't think this Buffalo team improved. I think, if anything, they stayed the same, in my opinion, overall. And so that's why I think, all things considered, I'm going to have to settle on a C+ for them, because I just don't really see the improvement. You lost a lot of... I think it was time to lose some of these guys. Like you said, they had to get under the cap, and some of these guys, like Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, they were old. Trey White can't stay healthy, but like I said, in the secondary, I don't really see what you replaced them with. I'm not super high. I think Mike Edwards is cool. I don't really see him as like a starting caliber safety, really, like for all 17 games. I think he's much better served as like a depth safety. So I just don't really see how the secondary is going to be even close to as good as they've been in recent years.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the big loss, Jordan Poyer, the veteran guy on that defensive back end that, 100 plus or 100 tackles last season, which, for a safety, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm kind of with you there. They're gonna have to figure something out. Who's making the calls there for their secondary, getting everybody aligned correctly and all that. Leonard Floyd, 10 plus sacks through the last 4 seasons. So, gonna see if Von Miller can keep that.
He's gonna have to find the fountain of youth or something. That.
Yeah. So, defense, I'm with you. Took a step back, probably. Offense, maybe got a little better. You got some more youth in there for your hopefully number 1 guy in Keon Coleman. Hopefully Kincaid can take a step forward this year. So I think I'm at a B-, and that's kind of pushing it.
Yeah, I do think Kincaid will take a step forward this season, especially with Diggs being gone. He could very well be the most targeted player in that pass catching group this next year. I think he was second last year, and he really came on more so in the second half of the season, kind of still being behind Dawson Knox to start the year. But yeah, I expect Kincaid to have a really good, maybe even a breakout season. I could see him breaking 1,000 yards receiving, maybe 10 touchdowns even. I think Khalil Shakir will probably take another step forward as well. Maybe he even flirts with 1,000 yards. Curtis Samuel, he's never really been anything crazy. He's always kind of hovered around that 600 to 800 yard range. So I don't expect him to, come in and, be as good as Stephon Diggs, maybe Gabe Davis. Yeah, I don't see how the Bills are going to be able to contend with teams like the Chiefs and the Ravens and the Bengals even this next year. Josh Allen can do a lot. Josh Allen is how. You're right. Josh Allen can do a lot. I think this offseason was not good to them. Heading on down to South Beach for the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins last season thought they had it all figured out and the division locked up, going 9-3 to start the season and holding a 3-game lead over the Bills for the division title, before injuries began to pile up and competition got a little stiffer, causing Miami to lose 3 of their last 5 games and allowing the Bills to barely clinch the division after they went undefeated in their last 5. This offseason, the Fins looked to finally put their divisional demons to rest in pursuit of clinching their first AFC East title in 15 years. Starting off with the key losses this offseason, Miami lost a few key pieces on their defensive front, most notably watching defensive lineman Christian Wilkins run away to Vegas to sign with the Raiders after 5 years with the Dolphins, where he racked up 350 total tackles as the main interior force on that defense, as well as Andrew Van Ginkel, who left Miami to sign a 2-year contract with the Minnesota Vikings, coming off of an injury in the last game of last season that pushed him to the IR right before the playoffs started. Miami also lost a couple of productive offensive linemen for them as guard Robert Hunt heads up the coast to sign with the Panthers on a massive 5-year, $100 million deal, while starting center Connor Williams remains unsigned. Williams had a short contract dispute last offseason before eventually reporting to training camp and would go on to have his season cut short by an ACL tear in Week 14 after a groin injury had already caused him to miss time early on in the season. while Hunt was limited to 11 games last season due to a hamstring injury. As for their key acquisitions, the Dolphins made an effort to replace some of what they lost on the offensive line, signing center Aaron Brewer away from the Tennessee Titans, who started every game of the last 2 seasons, splitting time between center and guard. They also looked to improve their tight end position by signing Jonnu Smith from the Atlanta Falcons, who's coming off of one of the best years of his career, despite playing the number 2 tight end position behind Kyle Pitts last season. And on the defense, they brought in a really good linebacker in Jordan Brooks from the Seahawks, who's collected over 500 total tackles in 4 seasons, including a league-leading 109 solo tackles back in 2021. Also on the defensive side, trying to add pieces to a secondary that already has Jalen Ramsey, bringing in cornerback Kendall Fuller from the Commanders and safety Jordan Poyer from the division rival Bills, both of which should be great veteran additions to the secondary, with 20 combined years of NFL experience between the two of them. And looking into the Dolphins draft, Miami immediately looked to replace some of the production lost by watching Van Ginkel walk out the door, selecting edge rusher Chop Robinson out of Penn State 21st overall. Robinson could end up being brought along slowly if Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips return to form after their respective injuries, but may be forced to take a larger role right away if either of them are slow in their recovery. They then looked to bring in some added protection for Tua by taking tackle Patrick Paul out of Houston in the 2nd round, who could be seen as the successor to Teron Armstead at the left tackle position, but could also step into that position this year if Armstead suffers through injuries yet again this upcoming season. Then in the 4th round, the Dolphins looked to add more speed to an already explosive backfield, taking Tennessee running back Jalen Wright, who could see some touches this season behind Achane and Mostert. Then Miami wasn't satisfied drafting just one edge rusher in this year's draft. They also selected Mohamed Kamara from Colorado State in the 5th round, who recorded 13 sacks in 12 games last season, showing he can be a force off the edge. So Aaron, what do you think of the Miami Dolphins offseason?
Yeah, they lost 2 of their, very few defensive players that were left at the end of last season, and Christian Wilkins and Van Ginkel, obviously plagued with injuries. So hopefully, fingers crossed that doesn't happen again this year. But yeah, Christian Wilkins, huge loss, one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league. But I think they did a decent job of filling all the holes that they had. They brought in Brooks, like you said, absolute nose for the football. 111 tackles last year, still finished 3rd on his team, which is insane considering Bobby Wagner had like 180. So
Yeah.
that's absolutely nuts. Kendall Fuller they brought in. He's a good veteran presence there in that secondary. Shaq Barrett isn't quite what he used to be, but he's still a threat out there. And then, like you said, Jordan Poyer, another guy, good veteran presence there. OBJ.
Oh yeah.
Could have a lot more of an impact than he did with Baltimore. Now that he's got some other receiving threats in Hill and Waddle that could help him space the field. Maybe we see a return to prime OBJ there. Chop Robinson. I don't know the most about him. I know he's an explosive kind of Micah Parsons-esque build type of pass rusher. Although Micah Parsons did play more of a middle linebacker role in his time in college and then transitioned to D end once he made it to the Cowboys. So I guess we'll see how Robinson develops. That'll be fun to watch. Jalen Wright, kind of like you said, kind of an explosive running back. They've got a low-key, real good running back room there down in Miami. And then Taj Washington, got him in the 7th round. I think that's a sneaky good pick. He improved year after year. Had 1,000 yards receiving in his last year there in that high-powered USC offense, 8 touchdowns. So I think that's a good developmental pick that they got. Good value pick there in the 7th round.
Yeah, no, I was really impressed with their draft specifically. I thought they did really well there. Like you said, I think Jalen Wright's perfect addition to that running back room. Very similar run style to those guys. You don't really have to worry about changing up the play calls with him back there because he can basically do the same stuff that Achane and Mostert can do. And then along with that, I'm really high on Chop Robinson. Higher on Verse. I think Verse would have been a better fit here, but Chop Robinson also really good as well. I think he was probably right behind Verse for me, and then probably Turner was my number one edge rusher. Latu might have been up there too. I'm not sure. I can't remember now, but yeah, I think Robinson's going to be a really good addition, especially getting time to grow behind Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, assuming they both come back from injury and are able to play the majority of this next year. So I love that. I love the other edge rusher they took too in Muhammad Kamara. He seems to have a real nose for the quarterback. 13 sacks in only 12 games is pretty impressive. Even though it was at Colorado State, so probably not the most stiff competition over there. But that kind of shows you just how he probably didn't belong at that level of football. Probably should have been at a Power 5 school, if anything, being able to put up sacks that easily. So, yeah, I really like what they did in the draft, Miami. And as far as like free agency goes, I don't really think they lost a ton outside of Christian Wilkins specifically. Their two linemen that they lost, Connor Williams and Robert Hunt, they were missing a lot of time anyways. They didn't play a whole lot last year, and about half the season last year, and Dolphins were still, I mean, granted that was when they kind of fell off a cliff, but I think a lot of that more so had to do with maybe the competition level going up and the defensive injuries also piling on. But I think Robert Hunt was a big loss. They could still get a deal done with Connor Williams. It's kind of to be seen there what his plans are after, he's still recovering from ACL surgery. So I don't even know if he'll be able to play this next year, even if he does resign. So I don't really think they lost a ton. They definitely lost a little bit, but I think they compensated for it fairly nicely, both in free agency and the draft. So I think I'm settling on a B grade for this Dolphins team this offseason.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with A minus.
Okay.
Because kind of like you said, Christian Wilkins was their biggest and probably definitely most significant, but probably only significant loss. I mean, Van Ginkel.
Yeah, he was more of a depth
but
player.
They brought in Robinson to replace him, so I think Robinson could easily replace the production that Van Ginkel brought in probably day one. So Christian Wilkins is really your only hole there. Looking to find that real good interior defensive lineman, which not very many teams have a player of Christian Wilkins' caliber.
No.
So obviously would have loved to bring him back, but not able to. And then they did a good job of, kind of averaging out their other holes. Kendall Fuller, Jordan Poyer, kind of like we said earlier. Lots of experience there and what the guys that they brought in just all across the board. And then good job in getting some developmental prospects in the draft. So I'm right there at an A minus.
Yeah, and I would say I probably have it higher at a B plus or maybe even an A minus. But my one concern is, Robert Hunt missed a fair amount of games last year. Connor Williams, same thing, missed a decent amount of games last year. But you didn't really bring in anything to replace them necessarily outside Aaron Brewer. I do think Aaron Brewer was a good get. But that's only one of those two spots that he can replace. He can't play two positions at once. So kind of would have liked them to bring in one more piece maybe in the interior offensive line. They did take Patrick Paul, so they could end up pushing someone to the interior, maybe even him. So I think that may be what I'm missing there. But then with those secondary additions, I do like the experience they bring. But one of the positions where, age kind of becomes a factor quicker than most is the secondary. So with two guys nearing or over the age of 30, at least Poyer's over the age of 30, they are still productive. We've seen that. But how many years do they really have left? Is this the year where they fall off a cliff? It could be. I don't think it's going to be, but it could be. And that's kind of the only thing that's keeping me from being like a B plus or an A minus, is the uncertainty behind how that age is going to impact those two specifically. So, moving back up the coast for the New England Patriots. The Patriots last season bid farewell to one of the most accomplished head coaches in NFL history, Bill Belichick, sending him off in disappointing fashion, going 4-13, which was an all-time low for Belichick, as it was the first time in his career his team finished with a winning percentage below 300. This offseason, they look to move on from the Belichick era by bringing in a fresh new head coach in Gerard Mayo that can maybe breathe some new life into a franchise that's been on the downswing since Tom Brady left. Wonder whatever happened to that guy. Anyways, starting off with the key departures this offseason for New England. The obvious one being Mac Jones getting traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars to back up Trevor Lawrence, despite looking pretty cool in his most recent social media post. I don't know if you saw that, Aaron, but it looked pretty cool. Also on the offense, they lost tackle Trent Brown and tight end Mike Gesicki, who both signed with the Cincinnati Bengals. Brown was in his second stint with the Patriots, starting in 24 of the 28 games he played for them the last 2 seasons, while Gesicki is coming off his first and only season with the Pats, where he recorded only 244 yards on less than 9 yards a catch. On the defensive side of the ball, Patriots' only notable losses were a couple of secondary players in safety Jalen Mills and cornerback Miles Bryant, both of which only started in about half the games last season. As for the key additions this offseason for the Patriots, while they didn't lose a whole lot in free agency, they really didn't bring in a whole lot outside of retaining some of the more impactful players they could have lost. They brought back safety Kyle Duggar, who's been a staple of that New England secondary the past couple seasons, as well as pass catchers Kendrick Bourne and Hunter Henry, both of which had 400 yards receiving and combined for 10 of the Patriots' 16 receiving touchdowns overall last season. Looking at the open market, the Patriots chose to go out and get a veteran QB to mentor their first-round pick, bringing back Jacoby Brissett, who they originally drafted back in 2016 and served as occasional relief for Sam Howell last season in Washington. They also brought in a veteran receiver in KJ Osborne from Minnesota, who put up over 500 yards and 3 touchdowns as the number 4 option for the Vikings last year, as well as veterans running back Antonio Gibson and tight end Austin Hooper from Washington and Las Vegas respectively. Gibson's numbers have dropped significantly over the last 2 seasons, largely due to seeing his role in the Commanders' offense diminish, while Hooper is coming off the worst year of his career statistically and is quickly approaching the age of 30. Looking into the draft, Patriots look to find a new franchise quarterback after taking Mac Jones just 3 years earlier, selecting Drake May 3rd overall out of North Carolina, who was widely regarded as the number 2 quarterback in this year's draft, before Jaden Daniels went nuclear this past season to win the Heisman Trophy. And there were even kind of still debates on whether Daniels or May would go number 2 leading up to the draft. After that, New England went out and got their new quarterback target to throw to, selecting wide receiver Jalen Polk out of Washington in the 2nd round. Polk was second on the team to only 9th overall pick Roma Dunze in both receiving yards and touchdowns last season for the Huskies, and is a pretty physical receiver despite weighing less than 200 pounds. The Patriots then looked to add to the offensive line in the next 2 rounds, taking tackle Caden Wallace out of Penn State in the 3rd round and guard Layden Robinson out of Texas A&M in the 4th round, both of which could be asked to step in right away if the O-line continues to struggle this year. New England then took a flyer on another receiver in the 4th, taking Javon Baker out of UCF, who looks to be more of a deep threat after recording almost 22 yards a catch last season. Then the Patriots wanted to make sure that they had a real nice full quarterback room, taking Joe Milton out of Tennessee in the 6th round to develop as a backup behind May for the next few seasons, it seems. So Aaron, what are your thoughts on the Patriots offseason?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't really lose a whole lot. Mike Gesicki, probably the highest ceiling of anybody they lost. But, even someone of his caliber struggled to have an impact on let's be real here, was an atrocious pass offense. Re-signed Kendrick Bourne. You know, it's real tough to kind of evaluate some of these players that they brought back because their offense was just so bad.
Yeah.
And was it lack of talent? Was it coaching? I don't think anybody really knows. Probably a combination of both. But they bring in Kendrick Osborne, who hopefully will provide a spark to the team. Had a solid stint there in Minnesota. And then, yeah, Jalen Polk, number 2 target in the stacked receiving room up there in Washington. Drake May, wonder kid seemingly. So I guess we'll just. I don't think I'm quite sold on Drake May yet. I know a lot of people are real high on him, but I think we'll just kind of have to wait and see how he develops. Kind of the same thing with Joe Milton. Nobody really knows how to evaluate Tennessee quarterbacks just because they run a kind of funky offense. He's a real athlete, got a rocket arm. So it'll be exciting to see kind of if there's a QB battle at some point in the future who starts to develop faster and in which direction they go. Probably leaning Drake May starting at the beginning of the season would be my guess. And then just seeing where it goes from there. But tough. I think kind of a tough situation for the Patriots to be in.
Yeah, I was having a difficult time trying to figure out where the heck I wanted to put their grade, to be honest with you. Because like I said, like you said, last season was so atrocious that it's really hard to kind of, and not in the way that the Panthers was atrocious, where we kind of all expected the Panthers to be bad, but Mac Jones has made the playoffs before. So to see him just absolutely fall off a cliff these last 2 years was quite the sight to behold, and I think a lot of that was Bill Belichick just absolutely ruined the guy's confidence, which is sad. It sucks for him. But yeah, I don't really know where to place their grade. At first I had them like lower than I probably do now, because after kind of going through it again, I think that I think they probably had a slightly better offseason than the Dolphins, but I don't know, because like Drake May, I don't know what to expect of him, especially in this offense, who we may or may not have an idea of how good. Probably don't have an idea of how good they're going to be. I think I saw a quote earlier that said like they weren't going to design the offense based around any specific quarterback, which I don't know why you take a quarterback 3rd overall if you're not going to commit to him. That seems kind of weird. But yeah, I don't really know what the Patriots are doing. I really like the Polk pick, so that kind of got me excited at the time. But then when I kind of take a step back and look at the rest of their offseason, I don't know if they did good or not. So I think I'm going to give them a B+, assuming that Drake May is good. But if he's bad, then B-. But if he's good, then B+. But if he's bad...
That's not how this works.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm like...
You gotta pick one.
I guess I'll go B+, because like I think I've got confidence that Drake May will figure it out.
I think I'm at a B- at best. You know, it's they went 2 quarterbacks in their draft, which, you know, I kind of see. Not really though. You would hope with as many holes as they have that they would go and try and get their, assuming the franchise guy that they drafted 3rd overall, maybe a running back, maybe a tight end, maybe another receiver, maybe some help on the defensive side of the ball. But no, they decided to draft another quarterback. So interesting decision there. And then they didn't really lose a bunch, but they didn't really bring a bunch in.
Yeah.
So I think they slightly improved, but I don't know if they're gonna be a contender for their division for the foreseeable future.
No, and I'm sure. Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to base this off of, right? They were so bad last year. Do I think they improved this year? Pretty damn sure. I'm pretty damn sure. I think so. They,
They got a new quarterback, so
yeah,
that's the start.
that right there alone is an improvement. So I would
Oh,
assume
yeah, they
they're
got
going to
two
be
new
better.
quarterbacks, so
Yeah.
that's
Two
bonus.
quarterbacks that are probably better than last year's starters. So that's twice as good between the two of them. Like that's like 4 times as good is what it is. It's 4 times as good of a quarterback if you put those two guys together, which you can't do, but that's probably the only way to justify my grade right now. So that's what I'm going to go with. I'm gonna just assume that they both will be under center simultaneously, taking snaps for the New England Patriots, and they're just going to go 4 linemen instead of 5 to make up for it.
Don't think that's legal. Gonna be running some wishbone quarterback. Don't know who you're gonna be snapped to. Bunch of double pass offense. That could
You're going to really throw them off.
be a new thing.
Really throw them off. Gerard Mayo, man, he's gonna revolutionize the game of football with this offense. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what the Patriots are gonna do. I think they improve. They'll be better. I expect them to be at least a 2-3 win better team this year. So that's gonna be my justification for giving them a B plus. So moving on to our final team of the whole offseason grading series, the New York Jets. The Jets saw their season's hopes and dreams get immediately shattered last year when Aaron Rodgers went down with Achilles rupture in the first drive of the season. New York looked to former second overall pick Zach Wilson to step up and lead the Jets to a potential playoff push like you would imagine a second overall pick would be able to do. But that didn't happen. Shocking, I know. The Jets would go 4-7 under Wilson and 7-10 overall, missing the playoffs once again and looking towards the offseason in hopes they can finally find the pieces they need to get back to the postseason. Starting off with the key departures, New York obviously felt it was time to part ways with Zach Wilson and dealt him to the Denver Broncos in a trade where they received essentially nothing but the pure joy they must have felt forcing Denver to take on another quarterback named Wilson. Other than that, though, most of the notable losses came on the defense. Watching edge rusher Bryce Huff sign with the Eagles after putting up the best numbers of his career with double-digit sacks for the first time in his 4 NFL seasons, as well as having starting D lineman last season Quentin Jefferson leave and sign with the Browns, and starting safety Jordan Whitehead parts ways with the Jets to sign back to the team that drafted him back in 2018, Tampa Bay, after leading the team in interceptions and finishing top 3 on the team in both pass breakups and total tackles last year. The Jets also lost their starting tackle Mekhi Becton in free agency, as he chose to sign with the Philadelphia Eagles as well, after he started all 16 games he played in last season, coming off a knee injury that forced him to miss all of the 2022 season. As for the key additions this offseason, New York looked to improve an offensive line that was a major issue last season, bringing in tackle Tyrone Smith from the Dallas Cowboys, as well as guard John Simpson and tackle Morgan Moses from the Baltimore Ravens. Smith signs with the New York Jets after 13 years for the Cowboys that included 5 All-Pro selections and 8 Pro Bowl honors, while Simpson was seen on just about every offensive play for the Ravens last year, playing in 99% of their offensive snaps. And Moses, while this one can't part the Red Sea, he did start in all 14 games he played in last year for the Ravens offense that was touted as one of the better ones in the NFL last year. They also took a flyer on defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw, who the Niners originally drafted 14th overall in 2020, but injuries have plagued his short career, limiting him to only 41 total games played in 4 seasons. As for the draft, the Jets tried to further improve their offensive line, taking tackle Olumiyiwa Fashanu out of Penn State, 11th overall, to provide some additional depth at the tackle position after grabbing 2 veteran stalwarts in Tyrone Smith and Morgan Moses this free agency period. After that, New York continued to add pieces to the offense, taking receiver Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky in the 3rd round, and a pair of running backs in the 4th and 5th in Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin and Isaiah Davis out of South Dakota State. Corley used to be a running back himself and recorded almost 700 yards after the catch last season, while Allen and Davis are both known to break or avoid tackles at the college level and should provide some good depth behind Breece Hall this upcoming year. And sandwiched between the two running backs, the Jets take a potential successor to Aaron Rodgers and quarterback Jordan Travis out of Florida State in the 5th round, who is recovering from a gruesome leg injury himself, but showed flashes at the college level that warranted him being taken in this year's draft. And with the mentorship of Rodgers, could develop into a quality starting quarterback in the NFL level. See Jordan Love. So, Aaron, how do you feel about the Jets' offseason this year?
Well, they had some big losses there on defense. Bryce Huff, kind of like you said, coming off his best season so far. Jordan Whitehead, massive loss, 97 tackles, 4 interceptions, played, I think, like 99% of their defensive snaps.
He was incredible.
Quentin Jefferson had decent production, so some significant losses there on the defensive side. But then they brought in Javon Kinlaw. Hopefully he's looking to get a fresh start there in New Jersey, since really only one team decides that, they want to play in New York, and everybody else decides that they were going to play in New Jersey. Mike Williams, the chief killer, big physical guy, can go for 1,000 yards, and can really make an impact there, I think. Tyron Smith, another big tackle get. Tyrod Taylor, capable quarterback, just in case, God forbid, Aaron Rodgers goes down again. But then, kind of like you said in the draft, Jordan Travis, who didn't just fly under the radar, disappeared entirely from it after his injury, which is real unfortunate. I think everybody kind of wanted to see how the end of the season played out with him healthy. I don't think Florida State gets left out of the college football playoff if he is healthy. But other than that, just, Fashanu, good solid pick. Did they really improve all that much? I mean, they kept a lot of their core guys. I mean, I think defense is going to be the question this year.
Yeah, I think they improved the offensive line for sure. I think the offensive line is going to be head and shoulders above what they were last year. Not just bringing in, Tyrone Smith and Morgan Moses and John Simpson in free agency, but also going out and still using your first round pick on a tackle in Fashanu. So I think those 4 additions alone, those are 4, in my opinion, those are 4 guys who could start on any offensive line right now, for the most part. Maybe not any offensive line, but a good portion. So I think all 4 of those guys are going to significantly improve the offensive line. Hopefully Aaron Rodgers doesn't tear his Achilles this next season. And if Aaron Rodgers can, which the big issue I think is going to be, is Aaron Rodgers going to be able to come back and be half the man, if not more than what he was before the injury? Because his play style was very reliant on moving around behind the line of scrimmage, evading pressure inside and outside of the pocket, making throws on the run. Is his Achilles going to be able to allow him to do that still? I think that's really what their season's going to come down to, is whether or not Aaron Rodgers is going to be Aaron Rodgers. But as far as the additions they made this offseason, I was actually extremely impressed with what they did. Not only the offensive line, I think taking a flyer on Javon Kinlaw after he finally got to play an entire season last year was worth it for sure. He could still potentially develop into something pretty special now, especially beside who's the other D tackle they already have down there or up there in New York? Young
Quentin
guy.
Williams?
Yeah, Quentin Williams. I think next to Williams, Javon Kinlaw could develop into maybe not exactly what we all thought he could be when he was drafted 14th overall, but at least a very serviceable, solid defensive tackle. Maybe even right away, given that he's probably going to get some more opportunities than he may have gotten on a stacked San Francisco front 7. And then as for the draft, I think they did really good in the draft. I already mentioned Fashanu. I think the running backs they took were interesting, but I do think they make sense when you think of Aaron Rodgers and maybe not being, the same player he was before the injury, maybe trying to take some more pressure off of him, adding some more depth to a running game that lacked some depth last year behind Breece Hall. I know they brought in Dalvin Cook, but he was far removed from what he was during his days in Minnesota. So I think Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis could see some touches this next season behind Breece Hall, maybe even if he gets hurt again. And then Corley, I think, could be interesting. I mean, we know how much Aaron Rodgers likes to, kind of dump it off on those slant routes over the middle to those smaller guys like Randall Cobb. So I could see him falling in love with this Malachi Corley guy. And, Corley coming out and being a little bit of a surprise in his rookie year. So I think with all that being said, I give the Jets an A-. I was really satisfied with what they did this offseason, despite the losses on defense. I know it may sound crazy, but I really do like their offseason for the most part, specifically because they improved the offensive line to such a degree.
I guess I'm just not as convinced as you are.
That's fair.
I think the offensive line, that's their biggest improvement, but I'm not really convinced with everywhere else. I think I'm right there kind of at a B, I guess, just because they did improve that O-line to such an extent. Mike Williams, that's a good get, but I think they lost some significant players there on defense that they probably could have looked to replace. They didn't need both those quarterbacks. They brought in Tariq Cohen as well, so they already had some depth there. I don't think they needed both of those running backs. So I think they could have gone some other places, but the Jets are gonna jet, I guess.
I can see what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, I see what you're saying with the redundancy for sure. I think it could be seen as kind of some overcorrection on New York's part for some sins that that Aaron Rodgers' former employer may have made in the past. But I think the Jets are gonna, assuming Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, I expect the Jets to be right up there battling for the division title this year after these moves. So, yeah, you don't like it. You don't like it.
No.
That's fine. I'm probably in the minority on this Jets hype, but I really do think that the offensive line improvements are going to be significant this offseason. They didn't just get, Joe Schmo from down the street. They got some perennial, starting caliber, really good linemen. Guys on highly touted offensive lines down there in Dallas and Baltimore, respectively. So I think those guys are going to make a big difference on the offensive side of the football. And then I keep forgetting to mention Mike Williams as well. If Mike Williams can stay healthy, which is another big if, he's really good. So, but I expect this division to be a little different than we've seen the last few years. Well, maybe not last year because it was kind of close last year, but prior to that, where Buffalo kind of ran away with the division, I think this year it's going to be fairly close, at the very least, between Buffalo and Miami. And in my opinion, New York's going to sneak in there and make some noise. But really, I think the Patriots are the only team you can count out this year in the AFC East. Other than that, though, I think it's gonna be really fun to see how this division shakes out. And now that the Bills have a little bit of competition over there on the East Coast, so. Unless you got anything else, Aaron, I think that'll do it for this episode of the Most Unprofessional Sports Channel on YouTube, Switcher Sports. I've been your host, Zach Zuckerberg, Burkle, here with the coast today. Aaron, don't say bye, Aaron.
Bye.
All right. Please make sure to like and subscribe if you made it this far into the video. Somehow we managed to make every single off-season video progressively longer, so if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, share to a friend, family member, but other than that, deuces, and have a good day.